Hebrews 13:8. We'll close with this. I think I gave this to Rick. It's just one verse, but I think it makes my point.
Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Yeah, what's that mean?
What it says.
What it says. I can't interpret better than that. Jesus Christ is the same today, yesterday, forever. How's he working now? Well, then that's how he's always worked. What's he doing now? Well, then that's what he's always done. He's always ruled, he's always reigned, he's always been the apple of God's eye, he's always been the focus of God's redemptive purposes, he has always been the means of the redemption of all God's people, he has always been the speaking agency for God, he is the one who made all things for his own purposes. Without him there's nothing made that was made, and he made everything according to the way he wanted to make it for his own glory. They were made by him and for him. That's the way he's always been. He doesn't change. He is Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. And that's just consistency. That's all I'm arguing for. We never did get to Jacob, but that's because Jennifer kept taking us off on wild goose chases.
Well, wouldn't God want, if he was going to interact with this man, wouldn't he want to do it privately? You wouldn't want, his kids coming around.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. Next week we'll actually get to Jacob wrestling. But you needed all this. Because you have to, I believe, if you're going to be biblically consistent, you have to look at that story through the lens of what if this is a Christophany? What if? Because if it is a Christophany, then it's very, very important to note that the same way that Melchizedek showed up before Abraham received the promised child, that the same way God now is going to pass on this promise to Jacob and said it's going to go to him, that one more time Christ shows up and blesses the same way that Melchizedek showed up and blessed and passed down the Abrahamic covenant, generation to generation, promise to promise. I'm telling you, the generations that received the Abrahamic covenant all received it as a gift of grace, an unconditional covenant, and they received it in Christ. And that's my argument. Because that's the way God's always worked. I'm sorry.
Unilaterally.
Well, let's say trilaterally, and then we're being a Trinity thing.
Okay.
All right? Any questions about all that? I'm sure you do have questions because that was an enormous chunk to bite off in one night. But we're just talking about the God of the Bible. This is the way Christ is described. When you talk about Jesus, this is the one we're talking about. This is why I get upset when I see stupid T-shirts about Jesus. When I see people wearing Jesus as a groovy accoutrement to their already groovy life, I think you don't know who you're messing with. You're messing with the one who is before all things and in whom everything consists and has its being, and everything was made by him and for him, and you're wearing him like he's a shiny light-up button. You got to be really much more respectful of the Christ of the Bible. You better figure out who you're dealing with, and you better treat him like who he is, which is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and he's the same as he's always been. He's the one who made everything in the beginning, was with God and is God, and he's the one that comes back at the end and every knee bows and every tongue confesses that he is Lord. That lordship does not change, never has changed, and you might as well understand that that's who you're dealing with, and he's not somebody you can just play like a puppet and bend like a wax nose. He actually is Lord and King. Understand me?
Yeah.
Okay. But what?
When you have a baby, you have to bond with that baby first. Now, you don't wait till he gets old enough to understand the fullness of fatherhood, to tell him who his father is, and to work with him and teach him and grow him. But we've got babies coming along.
I know. There are a lot of baby Christians out there who don't have enough theological basis to understand this stuff.
Right.
But there are two ways to approach that fact, though, Gladys. And I grew up in the church that said, everybody's babies, let's break out the milk again this week because nobody's grown up enough to eat anything but that. My attitude is, let's see who we can help grow up. I think we need to grow up in our Christianity.
Right.
Even if it means I have to talk to smaller groups of humans, I would rather say to them, you know what, let's actually grow up about our Christianity. Paul writes about it, that at a time when you should be teachers, I think it's the book of Hebrews, at a time when you should be teachers, you still are drinking milk. I mean, it was not something he was saying as a compliment. It's time to grow up, kids. At some point, you either take this stuff seriously or you don't. Look, it's Wednesday night, it's 8:30 at night, you could be anywhere doing anything, and yet people came here tonight to talk about the things of God. I take that as a responsibility And anybody who shows up here, I'm going to do my dead level best to teach them the deep things of God to the greatest degree I'm capable, in the hope that, exactly, in the hope that God by His Spirit will enlighten hearts and souls and minds to understand the deep things of God. And even if you don't get it all, my hope is you walk out of here with 2 more things than you had when you walked in.
You're alive, they're alive.
Yeah, little by little, precept upon precept, yes.
As you said, that reference to drinking milk wasn't like we would get it from a carton at the supermarket.
Yeah, right.
Most likely, you're still
babies, sucklings.
Yeah, you're still being nursed.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to grow up at some point. And when you grow up, he says, then you're ready to eat the strong meat. The strong meat, he says, is for those who are of mature age. Grow up in the Word. And you're never going to grow up if nobody challenges you to think about it. And the church these days doesn't want you to think. Yes, ma'am.
There are a few things that will really make me cry on the spot. Well, one of them is that I didn't have people in my life when I was in my 20s challenging me, teaching me. My parents, I love them. My dad's gone. My mom, I love. They sent us to church. They sent us to the little Southern Baptist church down the way. We walked down there with our little white New Testament Bibles. New Testament Bibles.
Only.
We weren't big enough for the full.
Right. You couldn't understand things like Genesis like Charlie can now.
Oh, no. No. But if anything, and it's a mixture of anger and regret and frustration and sorrow.
Yeah. Can I help you?
You are.
Oh, well, thanks. But you could have stayed there. You could have stayed in that state. And God, in His grace, decided it was time to open your eyes. So rather than spending all this time being angry at the people who never told you, thank God that He told you before you died.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. And I'm not angry at the people. I'm angry at the circumstances.
I understand.
And I know it was...
I grew up the same way. Oh, I feel the same way. I became aware of all this and began preaching it reasonably late in life. It took me this long to finally get a grip on the real truth to the point where I felt confident to go tell other people and say, okay, I've got a grip now I think that is firm enough and biblical enough that I'm willing to stand in front of people and even let them talk back and fire questions, and I'm ready to do this dance. But if I had been taught in my 20s like I should have been, I could have started this ministry much, much earlier and probably been much more successful by now.
And it's so true. And never was there ever in my life a more significant point than when he came up to me and knocked me on the head and said, now you can read the Bible.
Right.
I know the point, I know the spot.
Yeah.
He says, now you can see it.
Here it is.
Well, you see.
That's the God we talk about. Hold on one second. Yes.
Well, are they just the comments that you say, like, you think you would have been there or been more successful, I think are kind of humorous.
Oh yeah, that's me being a wise guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all kind of humorous, us agonizing over the past.
Right.
I mean,
We
think
could
of
do
my own
comments
life.
like that.
I had to have a gutful of the moldy bologna sandwich meals before I could appreciate a feast.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it any other way because I know me and God knew me too.
Right.
So I can't look back with regret and say anything.
Hey, I can look back over my life, and even though it took me this long to get here, that's how long it took me to get here. Because I had to go through a whole lot of other junk and excise that from my head in order to reach this point.
But what an interesting story. I mean, I thought Shakespeare, wrote such epics. People write such fabulous stories. But if we just took a look at our own lives, I mean, we could all be soap operas. We could all be miniseries.
Right. Most of us still are. Yeah.
I was trying to be nice.
I'm amazing TV.
I have to let you go. I have to let you go.
Thank you for joining us for this week's lesson. If you would like more information about Grace Christian Assembly or the teaching of God's sovereign grace, please visit us on the World Wide Web at salvationbygrace.org.